No Cap family, welcome back. As usual, we appreciate y'all joining us. As y'all can tell by the looks of things, it's a special occasion. You know? So we're in Richmond, Virginia at the General Assembly building with a very special guest. This is his third time on the show, but because of the occasion, man, we got to reintroduce him. So we sitting here with Mr. 6'5", you know? Mr. 6'5", Delegate Joshua Cole of the 65th District. And we appreciate you, man. We appreciate you coming. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm really excited to welcome you all in person and y'all watching virtually to y'all's office, the 65th District office here at the Virginia General Assembly building. And we're right in the thick of things. We just got started with session yesterday, and I'm really excited about some of the pieces of legislation we're going to bring out this year.
Yeah.
And see, you know, it takes a good character to a man of good character to keep their word. And on that last episode, you said if you won or when you won, you were going to invite us down and bring us in here. So we definitely appreciate you keeping your word. And we sort of feel like we helped play a hand.
Absolutely.
You know, just however it could have. We like to think that, you know.
Absolutely.
And we just glad you're here. And I remember the last episode, I mean, you were t-shirt, basketball shorts in the grind, you know, knocking doors. And to see you here now, just the progress of how that all came about, I think that's important for the audience to see it. Now we're in the plush executive suite, you know. So that's it's an honor, man. And
yeah, I think, you know, one of the things that I can just tell people is that hard work does pay off. You know,
absolutely.
This is my second time being in the General Assembly, and I just happened to be going through my personal Instagram page like maybe 2 days ago, and I saw a post from 2016 where I took a picture of the House floor, and I said, if you never see it before you see it, you'll never see it.
Wow.
That was 2016. Wow. I ran for office the first time in 2017, lost. Came back in 2019, won. Ran for re-election in 2021, lost. Came back, and we won. And so it's all about the hard work. And so, like you said, y'all came. I had literally just come from off knocking doors. I was sweaty, wearing a t-shirt. Y'all can go back and check the video out. And, you know, now we're here. You got to put the work in to be where you want to be. And let me be a testament that, you know, this little nappy-head boy from Stafford County who ain't had no money is now representing over 90,000 people between Fredericksburg, Stafford, and Spotsylvania County. And if I can do it, y'all can do it.
So I gotta say, man, when we came in here, the first two people we ran into
down the
spoke
line.
highly of you. So your name is ringing bells already around here. We ran into first Catherine Haynes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So we spoke to her. She's a lobbyist.
Yeah,
you know.
Wonderful people. And I think it's key just to see how this building works. When you come in here, you can run into a worker who is just cleaning up the building, and all the way to the Speaker of the House. By the way, we made history yesterday by electing the first black Speaker of the Virginia House of Delegates in Virginia's 400-year history. And so we voted to make him the Speaker, and then last night the governor gave the State of the Commonwealth, and typically sitting behind the governor, you have the Lieutenant Governor, the Speaker of the House, and the President of the Senate. And all three of those people are black. So for the first time in Virginia's 400-year history, you got a white governor giving the State of the Commonwealth and three black folks sitting behind him. And so you all are walking in on the grounds of buildings that our ancestors built, you know, over, 400 years ago. They came here, built this building, and we are our ancestors' wildest dream. I assure you, while they were carrying them bricks and slapping that mortar down, they never thought that their ancestor would be the Speaker of the House. They never thought that their ancestors would be the delegates and the senators making the laws in this building they were building. And so it's not lost on me, the history that we have going on right now.
I get that.
So why do you think so many people keep voting for you?
Well, I would like to say it's not me individually, but I am grateful that I get to be the carrier of the message. But I think for real what's happening is, especially as we look all across the Fredericksburg region, there are people who are hurting and they're struggling, whether it's inflation being high, they don't have enough money to pay their bills, or they're fighting to work multiple jobs. You have single moms that live on Cowan Boulevard, who live in Mayfield, who live in Hazel Hill, who live in Heather Hills, who are working multiple jobs every single day to make ends meet. And then you have families who are living paycheck to paycheck. And before I had gotten elected, it had just been rich, wealthy lawyers who had represented the Fredericksburg area in the General Assembly. And so when I ran for the first time in 2017, I said, hey, I'm a person who grew up in here. I went through Stafford County Public Schools. I know what it's like to struggle. For those people who commute, I was a slugger. I would slug up and down the road every day. And so I want you to know you have a representative that's fighting for you. And as we look at the shift in tide, people wanted a representative, not someone to lord over them, but someone who knew what their struggle was like, who could represent them and come down here in these halls and fight for legislation that's going to make their lives better.
I like that, man. You definitely in the streets, you're a man of the people. And I saw that you posted the other day you met with a group of Black and Latino men, correct? What did you get from that meeting with them, and what was discussed, what issues, and what do we plan to do about these issues?
Absolutely. So our U.S. Senator Tim Kaine reached out to me and said, hey, I want to pull a group of Black leaders, Black and Latino leaders together to just talk about the issues that are facing us. And so I called around, we pulled some people together, and we talked about mental health and stigma, especially for Black males. And I think we talked about this in our last show too, how stigmatizing it is for us to go find a counselor or a therapist to talk about the issues. We talked about the relationship between civic organizations and the churches, making sure that, back in the day, the church was the center of power. That's where Black people learned what was going on in the community. And now kind of like, churches are kind of like, falling on the wayside. You got 11 million churches everywhere you turn. And so we want to be able to restore that power so that the church can empower the people in the community, not just by knowledge, but by finances, by making sure that they know what they can have by, whether it's finances, whether it's civic engagement, whether it's knowing who's in your community. The church should be a resource for that, of how people can get access to that power. And we also talked about education. I don't have to tell you, if you have kids, that we are losing teachers left and right in the Fredericksburg region. We are having one of the highest teacher shortages in our history. We're losing teachers in Spotsylvania, we're losing teachers in Fredericksburg, we're losing teachers in Stafford County, and they're not leaving out of Virginia. They're just going literally 20 miles up the road to Prince William, to Fairfax. Why? Because they're getting $10,000 to $15,000 to even $20,000 more a year on pay because we can't pay our teachers here. And so we definitely have to talk about that issue. That's what some of the issues that were raised. And another issue that was raised, especially because I'm a Democrat and elected official, when you look across the board, I think I threw it in the trash, but I have this seating chart of the House of Delegates. When you look at the seating chart on the Democratic side, it's nothing but color. Black, brown, Latino, AAPI. You look on the Republican side, there's only one Black Republican over there. But we are losing Black male voters to the Republican Party, and even some women to the Republican Party, because they are talking a message that sounds good. Whereas we as Democrats do perform and deliver for the people in our community, we don't have a good sound message that we can deliver that excites people to get out and vote for us. And traditionally, typically, Black and brown voters are going to vote for the Democrats because that's the way it goes. But when it comes time to these tight elections and these tough elections, we don't have a message that mobilizes the voters to give them a sound reason why you need to vote for the Democrats. And so we also raised that in a conversation with the senator. What are we going to do this year that are going to mobilize voters? And if those of you are watching, most of you guys live in Fredericksburg, Stafford, up and down to Prince William County. We live in the 7th Congressional District, right? It's a brand new seat that's an open seat that is now dealing with a primary. We have the opportunity during this primary to send a Latina woman or a Black woman to go represent us in Congress. And so while we're talking about we don't have enough things to mobilize people, we have a district right now that is going to send the first Latina to Congress or the second Black woman to Congress to represent Virginia, and it all determines on who we vote for. And so that's important. And don't get me wrong, I don't want you to just vote for a person because of the color, but I want to make sure we're sending the person to Washington, D.C., who knows our struggle, just like what I'm doing right here in Richmond. I'm fighting for us, Lottie Dottie and everybody. I want to make sure we got a congresswoman or a congressman that's going to do the same thing for us too in D.C. Yeah.
So I know you got a lot on your agenda right now, and you got your game face on, but I do want to rewind back to the campaign days and pick up where we left off from the last episode and just finding out the news and that hard work paying off. What was that like, hearing about that victory?
Yeah, I was telling one of my colleagues, every day we go on the House floor around 12 o'clock and we're walking up, me and one of my other delegate friends, and I said, man, it still doesn't even feel real. Even though this is my second time of being here, just walking through the halls every day, just walking through the Capitol, I'm just like, man, I can't believe I'm here. So election night comes, I even knock doors on election day, try to drag people out to get them to show up and vote. And I don't know why it happened, but Prince William County is normally like the last county that turns in the votes, right? Prince William County votes started coming in faster than we did in Fredericksburg. And I'm just sitting there like, what is going on? What is going on? And my nerves are kind of bad because as the results were coming in, it was a tight race. I would be up by 200 votes. Then I would drop down 100 votes, go up 80 votes, drop down 200 votes. And so it kept going like this all night. And I was just sitting here. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. And so we changed a little bit of how voting works in Virginia now. And so we have same day voting. So if you're not registered to vote, you can register same day and vote right there on the spot. And then we also have early voting, which means 45 days before the election, you can go vote early in person. So I'm looking at these results come in, and I see all the early votes come in, and I shot up by 2,000 votes. And by that point, all the Republican parts of our district had come in. And so I was looking at my campaign manager, like, okay, we good, right? We good, right? Like, we good. She was like, I can't say anything yet until the state calls us. I can't say anything. And so we ended up winning by a little over 1,500 votes. Wow. The largest margin I've ever won by, we won by 6 points on election night. And I think that is attributed to, one, people struggling in the community, looking for someone who identifies with them, who's going to go to Richmond representing them. And another major issue which we talked about was reproductive freedom, making sure that people had their own choice and decisions when it comes to reproductive rights. And that was a major factor. As I was standing out there on the polls that night, there were people who were showing up who maybe didn't know who I was. And I said, oh, I'm Josh Cole. I'm the one, oh, you're Josh? What's your voice? What's your stance on abortion? And
straight up, right?
And I was like, I just want to make sure that it's a legally protected thing and that people have their choice. Thank you so much. They go in and vote. They come back out. Good luck,
That felt good, man.
Yeah.
So that's obviously top, one of your top bills that you're trying to get passed. What are a few others that are on the top of your list?
Yeah. So two of the major issues that we're focusing on, they're called constitutional amendments. And so we'll pass them this year. And the way a constitutional amendment works in Virginia, it has to pass 2 years. There has to be an election in between those 2 years. And then there has to pass on a ballot initiative. So this year we're going to pass making sure that Roe versus Wade is codified in the state constitution. And then we're going to also make sure that we codify restoration of rights, automatic restoration of rights for returning citizens. So as soon as you come home from being incarcerated, you're going to get your rights restored automatically. Those bills will, fingers crossed, pass this year. We'll wait, come back after the election in 2025, pass it again. And then on the 2026 ballot, you will be able to vote. The people of Virginia will vote if they want those two things to actually be codified in the state constitution. So those are two major things that we're working on. As relates to what I'm working on individually, we want to make sure that we're going to raise the minimum wage. When we came in 2020, we raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour. It was supposed to go up $1 each year until 2025. The new governor came in, swapped that down, and said, nah. So the minimum wage is sitting at like $12, I think, right now.
Last night.
It's sitting at $12. And if this bill passes in next January, it'll go up to $13, and it'll continue to go up until it hits $15. That's one that we're working on. We're also working on making sure that our educators, our teachers, are being paid on par with the national average. When it comes to teacher salary and teacher pay, and when I say educator, that doesn't just mean teachers, but that means the bus drivers, that means the teachers, that means the paraprofessionals, that means, anything that's helping out in the school. We are, I think, in like 47 or 48 out of the states for teacher pay. That means out of the 50 and some odd territories, Puerto Rico and the rest of them, we rank as one of the lowest in the nation for teacher pay.
But then one of the most expensive costs of living.
One of the most expensive costs to live. Then we put so much expectations on teachers. Right. And so we want to make sure that in Virginia, our educators are being paid on par with the national average. Yeah. And so that's also going to help us keep educators in the region. Like I said, we're losing educators to Prince William, we're losing them to Loudoun County, to Fairfax. And by raising that average, we're going to make sure that our teachers are staying in this region and that we're not losing good teachers. Right. We also want to make sure that we're protecting the environment. So we have some good bills to make sure that environment is being protected. We got a bunch of data centers popping up in the area. And so we want to make sure, we want that money for the data centers. We want that money to come into the region, but we also want to make sure that our water is being protected, that our power is being protected. So there's so much going on behind the scenes that many of us may not even know what's going on. Right. We want to make sure that those things are protected. And another major piece that I'm putting in right now, it may seem like nothing for many of us, but when you run for office, you have to submit paperwork. And all that paperwork has to be submitted in person on actual paper. Right. I'm putting in a bill to make sure that all that paperwork can be submitted online and virtually now. Because many people got to run for office. Sometimes if you're running for the General Assembly or something like that, and you live in Fairfax, or you live all the way out there in Albemarle, or all the way out there in the the other parts of Virginia, you have to drive all the way to Richmond just to drop off your paperwork. And for most people who are working class, I ain't got gas like that. So you know what? I can't do that. Right. We want to make sure that the level is the ground is level for anyone who wants to run for office. Submit your paperwork online, get your signatures online, file, and then you'll be able to go and hit the ground running.
So someone downstairs informed us that you were in the Health and Human Services Committee. Can you elaborate on what that is and what's the agenda for that specifically?
So the speaker is the one who appoints us to committees here on the House side, and we just got our committee assignments yesterday. So Health and Human Services, Privileges and Elections, and General Laws are the three committees I'll be serving this term. Health and Human Services is going to relate to anything dealing with healthcare. This morning we had our first HHS committee, and we received a report from the Secretary of Health and Human Resources. And basically we're talking about Medicaid, making sure that people are being requalified for Medicaid, that they're being placed back on the docket for that. But that committee also deals with mental health, as we were talking about that. So mental health, making sure that we have the nurses we need. Not only are we having a teacher shortage, but we're having a medical professional shortage in the Commonwealth of Virginia as well. So making sure that we can recuperate and recruit well qualified and experienced nurses, nurse practitioners, doctors right here in the region. And that committee is also making sure that we're dealing with anything with mental health and health as overall. And so I'm really excited to get involved with that, to make sure we can help out even with students with disabilities or people living with disabilities in our Commonwealth. That committee oversees all of that. And we're going to making sure that we fight for the people, the most vulnerable among us, and making sure that health care is being taken care of, making sure that mental health, we call it brain health, is being taken care of, and that we're doing everything we can to make Virginia healthy.
Yeah. And I remember the last episode with you, it was a tragedy at the middle school.
Yep.
So I'm glad that that's still on your radar. And I believe we were speaking on having mental health associates, assistants in the schools.
Yep. And one of the things I reached out because we found out that students actually have mental health days. They can take off from school a mental health day and it won't count against them as an unexcused absence. And that's going to be big.
And that's something that's in effect now.
It's already passed, And then I'm also carrying a bill this year thinking about mental health for any college student, if you give me a second, I'm going to pull out my wallet. Any college student who lives in the Commonwealth of Virginia, you know, most of us, we have, do I have it on me? I may not even have it on me.
Pay us after.
Well, we have, but most of us have these student IDs, right?
Yeah.
These student IDs from our colleges. And a student from George Mason University gave me the idea of, on the back of student IDs, we should be putting the suicide prevention hotline, 911, and any mental health services in the region on the back of these cards. And I was like, no, mine's got it on there. He's like, no, GMU and a few others are the only ones that did it. I got my Mary Washington ID right here. It's not on the back. So I have a bill this year that every university in the Commonwealth of Virginia has to include the suicide prevention hotline and any local 911, first aid, any of that information on the back, because you never know what these students are going through. And you look at your card, man, I got this number. Let me just see what I can do.
Right, yeah.
It could be someone's last attempt, you know, to solve their life, to save their life, to, you know, to make an effort to keep moving. And so I'm excited for that bill to go through this year too.
Most definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
And I know at the top of the year, a lot of new laws roll out. So are there any laws that you would like to inform the audience of that they may not be aware of that just rolled out that stands out to you? I'm sure there's tons of them.
Yeah, so you caught me on the spot. So I know the way it works in Virginia. In Virginia, every year we go through the session. New laws go into effect on July 1 of every year. So I'm not up to speed on what happened because, you know, I wasn't in the General Assembly the last 2 years, so I was just running. But what I will make sure is that when we finish this session and I know what new laws are going to go into effect in July of this year, I'll make y'all aware so you can let your audience know.
Okay. Now this is 90-day session.
It's a 60-day session.
60 days.
So we're down here until about March 9th.
Okay.
And that means we get 60 days to deliberate all of our bills, all the Senate bills, fight with each other, argue with each other, get it through, and then send over to the governor's office.
Okay.
So what are you looking forward to the most over this next 60 days?
Well, I think it's going to be important understanding the balance of government that we have in the General Assembly this year. So the Democrats have control of the Senate and the Democrats have control of the House, but of course we have a Republican governor. And so, of course, there are some things that we are diametrically opposed to, but there are some things that we are agreeing on. We are agreeing on funding for education. We are agreeing on mental health. We're agreeing to make sure that these students in schools are getting fed, but we have to do a little bit of push. And so a couple of weeks ago, the governor released his budget, and it sounded good on the table. He said, hey, I want to get rid of the car tax. We want to get rid of personal property tax. Oh my God, that's amazing. I ain't got to pay my personal property tax. That sound good until he told us what he wanted to replace the revenue with. The personal property tax in Virginia is the highest source of revenue for the state. So if we get rid of that, where are we replacing the money? He said, we're going to increase the sales tax all over the state. That kind of sounds okay too, until you realize if you get rid of the personal property tax and increase the sales tax, who is that hitting more? Working class citizens and people who are less vulnerable, right? Because take this for instance. I'm not saying that people who are poor don't have cars, because people have cars. But if you're low income, you may not have a car, but you're going grocery shopping. And if you have a car and can afford your personal property tax, and you know we split those payments up twice a year. Some people can afford to pay it all at once. You're not going to be bothered by the sales tax increase. But people who are living paycheck to paycheck, that's a hefty hike, and maybe they don't have to pay personal property tax, but that sales increase is going to hit their pocket the hardest. And if you think inflation was bad this summer, wait until that sales tax goes up. And so the leader over in the Senate has already said that the governor's increase proposal is dead on arrival. So we're going to take some time dealing with this budget, how the governor wants to fund things and how we want to fund things. But what I'm excited to look for this session is how we, as a divided government, are going to deliver and provide for Virginians. Because I think people, the naysayers, are expecting us to fail. They're expecting us not to deliver. But I have faith and hope that we'll be able to get this stuff together, work through this budget, get laws passed. And not only will we do that as the General Assembly, but when the bills go over to the governor, I am expecting him to sign them and pass them into law as well.
Well, we're here to help any way we can. You know, obviously, before you were elected, ways to help is voting for you, right?
Yeah.
How can people help now?
Now, it's going to be key that people learn and find out who their delegates and who their representatives are. I'll throw this website out there, and if you want a little comment underneath, it's VPAP, VPAP.org. You can go right on that website, plug in your address. It'll tell you who your delegate or your senator is. And if there's a particular bill that's coming up this session, you read a newspaper or you see something come across on social media and you're passionate about it, whether it's funding for our roads, funding for our teachers, the legalization of marijuana, which we did, but now we need to handle the marketing aspect of it. All of those things are coming up in this General Assembly session. You need to email your delegate and senator and say, hey, I'm your constituent and I urge you to support this, or I urge you to oppose this, because that's going to help us determine how we're going to vote this session and what bills actually get passed.
Is there anything on your agenda regarding I want to say this the politically correct way, but the mass incarceration issue, of course, in the district, in the district. I'm not going to, propose to save the whole world or anything, but just on your radar as far as Rappahannock Regional Jail in how it pertains to you. And there's a lot of rumors that that lingers around that jail with their revenue and the judges who actually send you to jail owning the jail, which sort of seems like a conflict of interest. But what's your stance on that whole area?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that is so important, just this past month, if I'm not mistaken, Virginia shuttered its last privately owned prison. So as we came into the new year, we do not have any more privately owned prisons. But that doesn't mean that the problem has been solved. We have heard the stories of the mother whose newborn child died at RRJ. We have heard the stories of people who are dealing with terrible solitary confinement issues at RRJ and throughout the Commonwealth. One of the bills I'm carrying this year would further restrict solitary confinement. We're calling it restorative housing in the Commonwealth of Virginia. But we want to make sure that there's better oversight for our jails and our prisons in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We want to make sure that we have the right judges on the bench who are going to pass equitable judgment when they're sitting on the bench. And the General Assembly, we are the ones who appoint the judges to the bench. And so I'm looking forward to making sure we have good judges on the bench this year. We also want to make sure that we are carrying criminal justice reform. When we look at the criminal justice system, it's not a punitive system. It should be a rehabilitative system where you get in trouble for doing something wrong. Now listen, if you are doing something wrong and we can't fix you, all right, that's a different story. But if you've done something wrong and it's a basic mistake in life, or there's the ways that we can do to restore you, to rehabilitate you, and then put you back on the streets to be a good citizen, we need to find those ways. And there are already plans in place to do that. We just have to make sure that those laws are on the book and that the Commonwealth is doing it. One of the major things that we've been working on, criminal justice reform, is back in the day, you could be pulled over. The police officers will call it pretextual stops, where if you had a tail light out or a headlight out, or your exhaust was a little bit loud, or you had tinted windows, they could pull you over. Police officers could pull you over and give you a ticket. When I served in the House about 4 years ago during the House Public Safety Committee, we heard testimony from police officers that said those stops were some of the most dangerous stops they had to perform, because they didn't know who they were pulling over, and they may have been met at the other end of a gun or something like that, or someone would run them over or whatever have you. So we changed the law to say that you can still get a ticket for those issues, but it's no longer the major reason they could pull you over. If you're doing a traffic infraction or something like that, they'll be able to pull you over. And if your windows are tinted too dark, then they can give you the ticket then. If you're, running a red light or doing something that is just cause to pull you over, they can give you a ticket for those other things, but those pretextual stops are no longer the main primary reason they could pull you over. Some Republicans have introduced a bill to repeal that, but we want to protect that, because not only is that protecting our officers, that's making sure that we're getting rid of some of these, basic itty-bitty issues that police officers don't need to pull people over for, right? And so those are other ways we can help to make sure that we're keeping people from behind bars. But I'm no longer on the Public Safety Committee, so I just have to communicate with some of my colleagues who are, and I'm really excited about the people who've been placed on public safety this year. We have Delegate Candy Monday King, who serves the district very north of us in North Stafford and Prince William County, who is a black wife of a black police officer. So she understands the struggle. She understands the importance of criminal justice reform, but also making sure that our police officers are respected and protected and keeping the bad cops accountable too. And so that's why I'm really excited about the people we have serving on these committees, because it's really important who you have on these committees voting on these laws before they make it to the General House.
So how optimistic are you going into this next 60 days as far as the bipartisanship? Do you think this time around, I know that was a concern that you voiced on our last episode, and I hope the audience goes back and does their homework. But this go around, do you feel better about that, playing ball with them?
Yeah, and as I said earlier, you know, the Democrats have control of the House, the Democrats have control of the Senate, and then we have a Republican governor. Republican members of the House and Republican members of the Senate, they want their bills to pass. They're going to have to work with us. And vice versa. If we want the governor to sign our bills, we're going to have to work with him. And so last night, the governor gave his State of the Commonwealth address, and there were things we agreed on. Again, funding for our schools, making sure that we are protecting victims of sexual domestic violence. We want to protect all of that. Mental health funding, we want to do all of that. But there are things that we're not going to bend on our values. We are not going to bend on reproductive freedom. We are not going to bend on LGBTQ equality and making sure that they're respected. We are not going to bend on criminal justice reform. We are not going to bend on protecting our environment. So there are things we'll work together, but there are things we won't back down from because they are important principles to us.
Yeah, understood.
Man, you taught us so much as always. You know, I gotta say though, you want me to shout you out a Keith Westbrook we ran into.
Yes.
Yeah, he made sure to say, he said, I trained him. So,
Hold on, you trained him or he trained
He trained me. So
okay.
I got my start here in the General Assembly when I was 14 years old as a page. I don't know if you've been walking around, you see some of the kids walking around in suits. Those are called pages. The General Assembly hires, and this is for people watching today too. Every year, the General Assembly hires middle schoolers to come work for us. It's called the Virginia House and the Senate Page Program. Between the ages of 12 and 15, you will get paid to come down here for 3 months, stay in a hotel, miss school. You still got to do your work though. Still got to do your work. Miss school and come work with us. And so that's how I got started. I got started as a page. I came back 10 years later as a Senate staffer. And then 2 years later, in 2018, I came back to work as a chief of staff for a delegate who I now get to serve with. And while I was her chief of staff, Keith Westbrook from Richmond trained me to be a chief of staff, got me together, and now I'm a delegate, you know?
It's no mistake. It's no mistake, man.
Yeah,
you know,
circle.
This is grace that we're in this room and just embracing that, feeling worthy of where you are and where you've made it to. That's important. You know, you're here for a reason, and we celebrate you, and we're gonna keep encouraging you and hold you accountable as well.
Absolutely,
you know?
I appreciate that. Absolutely. Listen, I tell people all the time when I was running for office, I would tell folks, I said, hey, I grew up here. My family is from here. You can't probably go around the corner without find someone who's related to me. You know? And so hold me accountable. Keep me accountable. Yeah. There may be some things we disagree with as far as policy or legislation, but when it comes to me being in the community, me showing up, me being accessible, hold me accountable if I'm not doing that, because I'm not here to be an elected official to lord over you. I'm here as a citizen legislator. Y'all are my bosses. Everyone watching this show, all y'all, even the camera crew, y'all are my bosses, and I got elected to do a work that you all asked me to do.
We got faith in you, man. It's
I
gonna be great.
appreciate
It's
it.
gonna be great. Once again, we appreciate you for joining us.
Yeah, and we thank you for your work, because when we did last time, I gotta say this, after the show we looked at the map of your jurisdiction, and I didn't think that you would be on my ballot. So we get there and everyone rushed the car and you're on the ballot. I'm like, this is the wrong ballot. He's like, where y'all stay again? So we go in. And you were actually on the ballot, so I actually got to vote for you.
All right,
so
I
then
appreciate it.
but the thing is, I actually, told the other elected officials that were running about the podcast. So now they want to have no cap
Put 'em on.
influence the elections going forward. So you opened a lot of doors
That's
for
amazing.
us So we appreciate you for that as well. Yeah. It's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. And I think it's so important. I want people to understand how important your voice is. And I tell people this all the time, especially as I'm talking to young people. I give a quote from President Obama. President Obama said, "If you don't let your grandparents pick your clothes, why are you letting your grandparents pick your leaders?" Because typically it's a bunch of older people who go and vote, and then we stay out, right? Then the next question I have for you is, if your vote didn't matter, why are they working so hard to prevent you from voting? They have introduced so many bills to prevent brown and black people and people of low income communities access to the ballot box. Since the governor has been elected, he has shut down early voting locations in predominantly black neighborhoods. We implemented Sunday voting in 2020. You know, black people love to go to church, get that chicken, and then go vote, right? And since we had Sunday voting and the governor's been in control, localities have shut down Sunday voting in majority black and brown communities. And so if your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't be fighting so hard to prevent you from voting. And then I hear this from other people, well, I don't care about politics, I ain't got time for politics. And then my response is this: you don't care about politics, but your landlord does. That's how they keep your rent high. You don't care about politics, but your insurance company does, and that's how they keep your premiums high. You don't care about politics, but your boss does, and that's how they keep your pay low. So while you don't care about politics, everything and everybody around you cares about politics, and that's why we're still struggling to this day.
It's the 6'5", y'all. Y'all hear it?
It's the 6'5". 65th.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, well,
I appreciate y'all. Thank you so
yes,
much.
yes, indeed, and I'm sure we'll. It may be a fourth. Who knows, man? We done just broke a record, you know. So I'm excited for this to be released, and thank you all for watching. This is No Cap.
Appreciate y'all.